Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. This is our first of many sessions that we're going to host every 3 weeks, webcasts, and the first one is titled First Things First. It's commonly known that a lot of people that purchase a CRM application start importing data and using the system quite fast and really don't take too much or get too much value out of the application. So what I decided to do is focus on what are some of the things that must be in place prior to actually embarking on the whole CRM journey. So now that you've purchased a CRM application or subscribed to a CRM application, the first thing that you need to do is you need to ensure that all of your data that resides in the CRM application is completely clean. As such, the title of this webcast is First Things First. What we're going to cover in today's session are really 4 or 5 things. The first thing is, what is the meaning of clean data in your CRM application? $1,000,000 question you must be able to answer before you even embark on any additional activity within your CRM application. Being able to audit newly created records in the CRM application. Auditing jobs and files. And what are some of the daily administrative tasks, daily, weekly, whatever you basically decide. Anybody that achieves those 5 points can really start taking advantage of the application and what it can provide. But those are crucial items, and as such, we want to go through them today. The content for today's session is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, following which I'll answer any questions up to 30 minutes. So if you do have any questions, you can start posting them using GoToMeeting through the chat window, and we'll take them as they come in once we've gone through the content. So to begin, I'd like to start talking about the meaning of clean data. So the first and most important thing about clean data is that there are no duplicates within your application. So if you have imported data from another application, or data is being entered by your users, or it's coming in from PSA, all of this data must be duplicate-free. Okay? The most important area for duplicate-free data is the contact section. So what I'll do is I'll navigate to our test environment here where we can actually display some of this information. And what I want to talk about is how would you quickly be able to verify whether there's a lot of duplicates and so on. A lot of you may be familiar already with creating views within the application and sorting within it. This would be the fastest way to actually determine whether there are any duplicates in your application, to create actual views, okay, and sort by any of the column headings to determine whether there are similar names and so on, okay. Depending on the amount of data that in your system, this may be a task that takes, a couple of hours, and it may be a task that takes a week, okay. The next step in determining whether your data is actually clean is to make sure that every single record in the CRM application is actually owned by somebody. Okay, so my username here is Lucas Restoration, but you may see records that are owned by an owner called System Account. System Account Owner is a dummy user in the CRM application, which means nobody actually owns that record. You also may have imported data from another application or spreadsheets that you have provided to us, and the owners may not be users on the CRM application. As such, any alerts that are going out to those individuals will not be received by anybody. So it is extremely crucial that every single contact that's in your CRM application is actually owned by a licensed user on the CRM system. To do that, you would either open up a record, any record, and using the Assign button, you would be able to search for the person that you actually want to assign the record to, okay? Or if you're doing this on mass basis, you would create views, and you would be able to use the Select option to checkmark the records you actually want to assign to the same individual, okay, and assign them using the left menu bar on the left-hand side and searching for the user you actually want to assign them to. Okay? A little bit about the checking of records. If you're manipulating a lot of data, you'll notice that at the bottom of the right-hand side of the screen, the system will display how many records are in your view and how many of those records are actually selected. If you have views that display more than 100 records and so on, it may get quite tedious for you to actually select the records. As such, the system allows you to place the number of records you would want the system to put a check mark into, okay? And by placing, say, 10 records and clicking the selected option, the system will actually perform the check mark for you, allowing you very quickly to select the top 10 records and assign them to the appropriate users. So just to recap on this point, every record, specifically contact, should be owned by a licensed Luxor CRM user, okay? Best case scenario, the same thing would apply in organizations module, where all your State Farm offices and insurance offices reside, vendors, police departments, and so on. The same thing would apply in this case, where every single organization would actually be owned by a licensed Luxor user. And of course, the same thing applies where you can select multiple organizations and assign them to the appropriate individual. Next thing about containing clean data in the CRM system is to ensure that as your users are actually entering information, that we're capturing as much of information as possible. So when entering a new record, whether it's an organization or contact, as an administrator, you have the capability to decide what fields are actually required in order to create the record and perform a save or save and close. Okay? I encourage you to decide which fields are a must and which fields should not be necessary in order to create a record. Our system allows you to specify whether the field is required on adding a record, on updating a record, or on all, in which case you can actually say that when adding a record at the first time, all we need is a company name and type, but if we're updating a record, we may also need an address and so on. Okay? To do that, as an administrator, you would navigate to the admin section located on the top right-hand side. Once in the administrator section, you would navigate to the module management section. Once in module management section, you'll be able to select the module that you want to indicate where fields are required. So say we're going to work with the organization module. Once in organizations module, you will select the organization fields. This is an area which allows you to actually customize the form, create custom fields and so on, as well decide what fields are required and in what stage of the action. So for example, if we want to make phone number required field, all we would do is click on this row and select whether we want the field required on all, on add, or on update. In most cases, you would probably say all. In some cases, if you want to get very particular, you may select that some fields are required only when updating a record, not when adding. I do encourage you to really think this through. We do not want to prevent users from putting the data, so do not get too excited about making every field required, because it will result in the fact that users will not have enough information and you'll end up with no data. So some data is better than none, but we do also want to monitor and make sure that information is captured to our liking and to the procedures and protocols that we've defined in our organization. Okay, so again, to do this, all you would do is navigate to the administrator section, module management, select the module you want to work with. If in this case we're working with contacts, we would click on contact fields, and from within here we get to select which field we actually want to make required, and by clicking on the field we get to choose whether we want it required on all, add, or update. Okay, I strongly recommend and encourage you to make sure that 2 fields are required, especially if you're a PSA user. Every single organization must have a name, and it must have a type. Okay, type is a field that synchronizes between the 2 systems. Okay, and it identifies the record type being either a commercial organization, an independent adjusting firm, police department, insurance company, agency, and so on. We always want to know what we're working with. Okay. If you believe that your data is completely clean, okay, and there are no duplicates in the system, then you can definitely proceed to the next point, which we've talked about during the beginning session today, which is what is the million-dollar question, which is where does my business actually come from? If for any reason you believe that you have duplicates in your data, I would recommend that you contact our support department and engage them in deduplication, or at least instructions on how to deduplicate data between the two systems if you're a user of PSA and Luxor. I will also forward a checklist that will allow you to do this following this session. Okay, so if you're interested in the checklist, please email me and I'll provide that to you as well. So moving on to the second point, which is where does my business actually come from? In order to be able to answer this question, every single job that comes into Luxor, whether it's coming in as a result of a user creating jobs in Luxor, or if you're a PSA user, your jobs may be coming from PSA, every job must have the referral source. Okay, referral source is known as referred by field in the PSA application. Okay, and it's something that must be filled out on every single job in order for us to actually understand where the work comes from. In addition, okay, of filling out the referral source, we must make sure that the users that are populating the jobs into the systems and doing the intakes actually have a great understanding of what requires the population of a referring contact and which sources do not require population of the contact. So here's an example of what I recommend that every single person which is able to enter jobs has in front of their desk or in front of them every single day. They should be provided with a single page of paper which shows that these referral sources or referred by options on the left-hand side actually require selection of who referred the work to us. So if it's an agent choice selected in referred by or referral source option, the user should be required to populate which agent actually made that referral. If it's an adjuster, the same thing, property manager, fire department, plumber, and so on. If the referral source or referred by field selected is any of the options located on the blue column, okay, this would require the user to always leave the other fields empty, okay? So just quickly jumping into what the screenshot of PSA here, if we look at the job screen of PSA on the bottom left-hand side, we have three critical fields that pertain to actual referral. The first one is referred by. This is the selection where the user would choose whether the job was referred as a result of yellow pages, as a result of agent or adjuster. And again, the following two fields, which is referred by customer vendor, which is the office, and referred by contact, which is the individual within the office, are the fields that would have to be populated when selecting any of the options that are shown here on the left-hand side. All users should have a clear understanding of how this is done, and that data would need to be monitored by you as the CRM administrator. Okay. In order to do that, we're going to have to create certain views in the CRM application to help you better manage the intake of data. So the next step is to actually monitor and audit every single newly created record in the CRM application. And this applies not only to jobs, but organizations and contacts as well. Okay? My recommendation is that every one of you create a tab for each one of the modules, so organizations, contacts, and jobs. The tab would be called administration and would be located between the organization information and sharing tab in this case. And to do that, we would navigate to the administrator section, module management, organization management, organization fields. On the top left-hand side, you'll notice a button which allows you to actually create a new tab. We will name this tab, in this case, administration. Add the tab. we will actually secure the tab to make sure that nobody can access any information located on this tab unless they are part of a specific security group. So for those of you that are on the call, most likely you're the administrator of the system. I would recommend that you would secure down this tab to only administrators. Okay, this will indicate that the tab will not even appear for any other user. Okay, and now I would actually add a field to this tab called Audited. Oops. The field type would be checkbox and save. And I would recommend that this is performed on every module, so not only on organization module, but contacts as well as jobs. So again, to perform the same type of thing on the other modules, all you would do is either close this and navigate back to the section which allows you which module you want to work with, select the module, add a new tab. Again, I would call it Administration. Secure the tab by clicking the Security Group button and selecting which security group of users will have access to actually view the information on this tab, and then add a field called Audited. The field type would be checkbox, and we would save the record. I'll do the same thing again strictly for the job module. Once again, top left-hand side, Administration. Add a new, or secure the tab only to administrators, and add a new field called Audited. What this will allow us to do is to make sure that we can create views which show us any records we have yet to audit. Checkbox. You'll notice that if we open up any of these records at this point, so if we navigate to Contacts module and open up a contact, we now have a new tab called Administration. We have an audited field. No other user will be able to actually see this tab. And what we have the ability to perform now is actually look through the records, select the ones that we've confirmed are correct, data's been filled out correctly and we're okay with, and using an option called Mass Edit, we can select the audited field, select the option Yes, click Save, and the system will actually place that check mark in all these records. So now that we actually have this view, have this field and security tab set up, the next thing is to make sure that all records that you currently have in the system, provided you are sure that all those records are clean and there are no duplicates, my recommendation is to actually go in the system and mark everything as audited yes. Okay, so you would navigate to the Views All Items to make sure you're looking at all records. Check off the checkbox all the way on top, which will place a check mark in every record in the system. Okay, I'm going to uncheck a few of them for the purpose of this presentation, which shows us now that there's 18 out of 21 records checked, and performing a mass edit on the selected records where audited field is set to yes. What the system will do is it'll actually place a check mark in all of them. And I would apply this in every module. Again, the only time I would suggest you do this if you're actually comfortable saying that all your data is clean, and from here on you're going to monitor newly created records. To do that, to monitor newly created records, the views that you will create for yourself by clicking the drop-down arrows here and selecting a view, adding a new view, you'll select any data you want to see within your view. So for example, if you want to see the company name, the address, city, maybe who owns the record. So you'll select whatever fields, And the condition for the view is to show you only records where the audited field is set to null. And name the view not audited or yet to be audited. Oops. Save and view, and the system will actually show you only records that have not yet been audited. In which case, as you're reviewing the record, you can open up the screen, confirm that the information is filled out correctly, and if comfortable, select the records and perform mass edit, applying the audited field to yes. Those records then will disappear from your view. And this would be applicable in every single case. It would be applicable in contacts, organizations, and jobs. So there are there are two inputs of data into the CRM system in an environment where you may be using PSA. One is information coming in that's entered by your claims coordinators, people that are actually entering data into PSA, as a result of which nightly sync will actually populate Luxor. And again, it should be verified whether the data has been populated correctly. The other source of input is your users, your marketing staff, entering new contacts and new organizations. And again, we want to confirm that the data is entered correctly and populated correctly in the system. Moving on, I want to talk quickly about auditing the jobs and files that are coming in from PSA. So not only do we want to verify that the information is correct and we audit it for the purpose of making sure the fields are filled out correctly, but we also want to make sure that we identify what constitutes a completed file. And in order to do that, what we need to do is create a view which shows us all jobs that are not audited. So where audited is set to null. The data about the job that we would want to see is the job name. In this example, it's called opportunity name, but job name, who, maybe the value of the job. Maybe we want to see when the job was created. One of the most important fields, which we've already talked about, is referral source. And then we may want to see who's the adjuster agent, who's the agent, who's the insurance agent, and who is the referrer on the job. I would actually place the referral source and referred by fields next to each other. So to do that, all I would do is select the referred by field, and using the arrows on the right-hand side, I would actually move the referred by column right next to referral source. And the reason we want to do that is we want to make sure that the appropriate referral source has the actual referring individual. So not audited. So here's all the jobs that we have yet to audit it. And on the right-hand side, what you're currently seeing, without having to open the record, you get to see what was the referral source, who is the referring individual, okay, which tells us that if in any case you're seeing an option here such as DKI or yellow pages, you would want to make sure that the referred by is empty, okay? And again, just quickly speaking back to this, the only time referred by is showing an individual is when the person actually had a choice to send the job somewhere else, yet they've sent it to you. Okay, we never want to make sure that somebody is being associated as a referrer if they're contracted to send the work to you. Okay, that way nobody ever looks as if they're sending you a lot of business when really, if they're gone, that work will still keep coming. And then, of course, if we've identified in our organization that every single job must have an adjuster agent or an agent or insurance agent, then we're looking for empty spots in here. And what we want to do is perform a completion of the file and come up with an internal process to make sure that any jobs that are inputted in the system that may be missing this information are actually completed in, say, a week's time or whatever it may be, 48 hours, whatever is acceptable to you in your business. The point is that every single job eventually should have a completed file to increase the amount of people in your marketing database and to ensure that we understand who we're working for or whose customers we're actually working for. So some of the tasks, just to recap, some of the tasks that are required by to be done by the administrator, and again, you can decide as to whether those tasks are going to be done daily, weekly, or as often as you like, would be to audit every single record that's created in the system, again, either by the synchronization between the PSA application and Luxor CRM or entered by your marketing or other users on the system. That would be task number one. Task number two is to ensure that every single job has referral source in it and all the other information is completed within a sufficient amount of time. Task number three is to make sure that newly created records that come in as a result of PSA synchronization are actually assigned to the appropriate users. So just to show you one more thing here is you have complete control over deciding who receives any data that comes in from PSA. To do that, you would navigate to the administrator section, restoration settings, and you get to select who will receive any contacts on organizations that are coming in as a result of the synchronization with PSA. As such, you will be responsible for making sure that those records are not only reviewed and audited that the data is completed correctly, but are also assigned to the appropriate marketing rep to ensure that this information and those individuals are actually looked after based on the procedures and policies that are defined in your organization. This is all I have for today. We're going to quickly look at the questions that may have been posted right now and see if we can get those answered for you guys. We've got about 5 minutes left. What are you auditing with this exercise? So again, just to recap, maybe I have answered this question throughout, but the data that we're auditing is to make sure that any record created, whether it's an organization, being an office, insurance company, or whatever it may be, or a contact, so an agent, adjuster, plumber, whatever, that the data that's entered is correct and it meets the minimum standards defined in your organization. The second part of the audit is specific to auditing the actual file, the job, to make sure that every job entered in the system has a referral source, okay, which tells us how the job came in, okay, and if the referral source identifies the job coming in where somebody had a choice to send the work somewhere else, yet they sent it to you, to make sure that we're capturing who did it. This is the only way we'll actually be able to answer the million-dollar question, which is, where does all our work come from? And in order to even begin moving forward with usage of Luxor, those are some of the key things that you need to be able to answer. Moving on to the next question, regarding the admin tab and audit checkbox, the audit is only as good as the data at the time of the audit, not when if other users make changes. Is this just for the process of deduplication? It is for the process of deduplication, but we also understand that 90% of the time record is entered, all the data entered on the record remains the same 90% of the time. It's very rare. Only 10% of the data that's in the system gets updated as a result of changes to phone numbers or addresses, which means 90% of the time what we capture on the first insert is what remains in the system. Okay, it's just the brutal truth of any type of database that you may be managing. As such, I really believe that just having a look at the data that gets entered for the first time will resolve 90% of the issues with cleanliness of your information. Moving on to the next question, when we receive the adjuster agent info after the initial claim is taken, how long until PSA update Luxor? Okay, so all the PSA updates are currently set up to be nightly, which is every 24 hours. Majority of the clients' synchronization is set between the hours of 12 and 3 a.m., depending on what time zone you're on. The initial synchronization can take a very long time, depending on the amount of data that's in the system. but the ongoing nightly syncs only synchronize changes, as a result of which those syncs take minutes, okay, if even that. Moving on to the next question, how do you delete duplicates? Okay, it's a very good question. The duplicate record must be deleted at this point in both systems. Okay, so just to recap what the synchronization currently does between PSA and Luxor, insert of a record actually inserts the record to the respective other application in either case. So if I add a new contact in PSA, that contact will end up being added in Luxor as a result of the synchronization, and vice versa. If I add a new contact or new organization in Luxor, that newly created record will then be created in PSA after the next synchronization. If I'm updating any information or deleting data, the information updating information must be performed in PSA. Deletion must currently be done in both systems. Okay. Can one person own an organization, another or same person own the contact under the organization, and yet another person own a job under the contact? Yes, that is correct. All three cases, which means the one thing to remember is you can only have one owner per record. So only one person can own an organization, one person can own a contact. But the answer is yes, there can be different owner of the organization and different owners for the related contacts, as well as different owners for the related jobs. Just to touch on the ownership of a job ownership is defined by the owner of the contact, which is identified as the referrer on the job. So just to recap what I just said, if I own the contact that is identified as the referring contact on a job, I will by default become the owner of the job. As a result of this, you're able to track commissions and incentives through the CRM application that are marketing related. Are PSA and Luxor communicating back and forth right now? Only on creation and update from PSA to Luxor. Okay, deletion has to be done in both systems. We are a few weeks away from being able to provide two-way synchronization, and we will post a notification publicly once that's available. Next question, what is the default time frame for data within reports or views? Don't seem to see how to change. What is the default time frame for data within reports or views? I believe we're referring to a creation date here, and if the question does refer to creation date, the creation date is now being pulled in correctly from PSA. I know there were some discrepancies previously, but that data has been updated, and any created dates appearing in Luxor are the creation dates from PSA. Can you show setting the audit view again? Yeah, we can quickly take a look at that right now. So setting up the audit view. If we want to set up this view specific to contacts, again, all we would do in this case is add a new view by clicking the arrows pointing down, clicking add a new view, selecting the information that is important for us to see in order to make a logical or smart decision whether the record can be audited, yes or no. In this case, we're going to select contact name, company name, and so on. I'm just going to select 3 fields. The condition for the view should always be audited is no, which will tell us those are all the records that have yet to be audited. And then, of course, name the view as not audited. I'll just put a 1 here, save and view, and the system will actually display all records that have yet to be marked audited. And moving on to the next question. Did you say you can create in either system? Yes, that's correct. Records can be created in either systems, and they'll synchronize to the other application following the next synchronization. Did you say few weeks or days for the PSA Luxor sync both ways? I don't want to say days on this call, but it's going to be there within the next week or two. Okay. How do we get all contacts in Luxor syncing with Outlook properly? I would recommend, this is a question for our support. Okay. I don't want to touch on this during this session, but please address it with support. It's definitely possible. And is anyone else having difficulty with the Luxor Send and Outlook? If you're experiencing any type of Outlook synchronization, I recommend that you do contact support department, and they'll definitely help you guys resolve this. With that, we'll end today's session, guys. This session is recorded and will be published, okay, within the next few days, and we will forward a link in case you'd like to share this with any other employees in your organization. And if you have any other questions, again, feel free to reach out to our support. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.